We are live, and I am beyond grateful. So, today's guest is someone whose work has profoundly influenced the way I think, but I think the way that many of us think about psychology, healing, crises, community, and what it means to be fully human. Dr. Bayo Akomolafe is an internationally renowned philosopher, poet, psychologist, but I like to use recovering psychologist, which was the term I heard from you at first, public intellectual, teacher, and in my opinion, one of the most original voices exploring the challenges of our time. Rooted in Yoruba community, cosmology, and drawing from post-humanist philosophy, ecology, indigenous knowledge systems, and complexity theory, Bayo invites us to move beyond easy answers and into deeper relationships with uncertainty, mystery, and emergence. He's the visionary founder and executive director of the Emergence Network, a global inquiry exploring new ways of responding to the ecological, social, political, and spiritual crises of our age. Rather than asking how we solve today's problems, the Emergence Network asks how these very crises might be inviting us into an entirely different way of being, knowing, and relating. Bayo is also the creator and host of internationally celebrated learning community We Will Dance with Mountains, now part of the broader Dancing with Mountains organization. Through these gatherings, he's cultivated a worldwide community exploring post-activism, ecology, embodiment, decolonization, education, spirituality, and what it means to meet an uncertain world with curiosity instead of control. He is the author of the acclaimed These Wilds Beyond Our Fences, Letters to My Daughter on Humanity's Search for Home, the co-author of We Will Tell Our Own Story, The Lions of Africa Speak, and most recently, the author of Selah, a beautifully curated collection of amorphisms, prose poems, philosophical fragments, and reflections that serve as an accessible doorway into his remarkable body of work. The title, drawn from the ancient Hebrew word Selah, is an invitation to pause, to listen, and to make space for something new to emerge, a theme that runs throughout Bayo's life and teachings. But perhaps what draws so many to Bayo is not simply his scholarship. It's his invitation to slow down, to question our assumptions, to discover that healing may not always mean fixing, and that sometimes the most profound transformation begins when we're willing to let go of certainty and become more intimate with mystery. It's truly an honor to welcome one of the most thoughtful and provocative voices of our generation. Bayo, welcome to Conversations with Dr. Wes.
Great to be here, brother. Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So I'd love to just kind of start off with, for those that are listening, that, you know, they got your bio and kind of understand abstractly, but if you could tell us a little bit about your journey and your story, and what has kind of brought you to where you currently are, such an activist and voice for what you are studying and teaching. That would be amazing.
I never know how to do those well. Tracing biographies or biographical lines to some origin or how I became a villain narrative, you know. I was born in Nigeria and many years ago, and I was born into this world that was marked with fire and yearning and longing and forgetfulness. The world of the Yoruba people, and it wasn't quite the world of the Yoruba people, to the world that accommodated Yoruba people in Lagos, which is the largest city in Nigeria. And it was there that I went to school and learned to ask some questions that I now know how to ask. Yes, it was there that I learned to live with my family after my father passed away. And my father's passing is not the focus, and yet it permeates everything that I do and that I've done ever since. My father's passing was a deeply challenging time for my family, for my mother, for my sisters. I had to be, in many respects, the breadwinner at a very young age, to go out on the streets and hawk um, chicken, fried chicken, not fried chicken, barbecue chicken. I would sell that on the streets. And yeah, that's how we had food on our table. And that's how I maintained my mother's business. My mother's business was exactly what I was doing, and I had to do it at least for a short time. Um, and then I went to school um, with some of the funds that we were able to generate. Um, of course, I'm hopping and skipping from here to there, right down to the place where I'm seated with, I'm done with school now, and I'm seated in front of a shaman, a Yoruba healer. We call them babalawos, and I'm doing my PhD now. And my interpreter is right next to me, trying to translate my perfectly polished English to this healer who does not understand what I'm saying. And at some point, I asked a question about auditory hallucination. And he says, why would you want to heal that? The implication of my question was, how do you heal or respond to people who complain about voices in your heads? It's a PhD, an ethnographic study, exploring um, different modalities of clinical psychological intervention. How do people understand therapy? Um, and he said, well, I don't know why you would want to heal that. What if that's your grandmother? What if that's an ancestor? What if that's your father? And in a sense, that connected me right back to the beginning, where I lost my father, giant cyclical loop, right? Because in that moment, I was connected with my loss. I was connected with the possibility that loss is political, that loss is intriguing, that loss is not as mathematically secure as we think it is. That in losing my father, um, that there's no need for me to think of losing my father as a loss of his voice, or as a loss of the relationship, or as a loss of the conversation that we were having and still might yet have. And ever since that moment, I've been doing what I've been doing in the world. It seems I was summoned in that moment to challenge obstruction, to notice the strange queer kind of life and hidden kind of life in forms of closure. That colonization, as severe and austere and impervious and imperial as it is, might present to us stranger forms of life within them than might be available if we just thought we were having our merry way. And it's within these spaces of thought and challenging ideas and loss that I was able to formulate my first concepts that I still travel with. That the times are urgent, we have to slow down. Where slowing down is not a function of speed, it's a function of how we are in relationship with the ecologies and bodies around us, how we are, what kinds of arrangements might allow worlds in which sons distressed by the losses of their fathers might still be able to converse with their fathers. What kind of world might enable us to have conversations with the mountains in front of us instead of trying to level them and progress along our merry way. I think that's what brings me here.
Bayo, I am profoundly grateful for your utilization of language, which is highly limiting in many ways, but you break through, and you break through in a way that reminds me very much of Gilles Deleuze and Félix Guattari's work, and their utilizing language as a rhizome and a thought pattern, and being able. But I really wanted to come back to your father and some of your beautiful writing, which I share with many, and I'm like, get ready. This is not your standard, use of nomenclature and verbiage in particular ways. And I love it because AI, good luck. Everybody's like, AI will write it. And I'm like, they're not going to write what Bayo's writing, because it is beautiful and artistic. But I wanted to read from These Wilds Beyond Our Fences, Letters to My Daughter on Humanity's Search for Home. And you in the prologue, you write this beautiful piece about your father, but you say, he will haunt my dreams, my yearnings for arrival, and my visions of justice, my want of warmth. I will seek out his smile in a vast conspiracy of things, in the warp, woof, swoop, and swirl of my days, in my teenage struggles for homecomings and transcendence, in my failed relationships and how I rationalize them away, in my longing to explain the world in one breath, a grand theory of everything, and in my hopes to always be held in place. He will stand with me, a gaping hole of abiding absence, a figure of things yet to be and things that might have been, as I stand in wait for my bride to join me under the decorated tree. And he will stir when I hold you in my arms for the first time you insist on breathing. He will haunt us both. My father is cool like that. Dude, it's so beautiful. It's so powerful. And of course, you're writing to your daughter, and that, I could read many, many pages. But with working with the Yoruba healer, it's so important to recognize the deep, insidious, continual indoctrination and conditioning from Western psychology telling us what it means to be whole, what it means to heal, what is abnormal versus what is neurotypical. And that profound cultural shift that you had, where you are doing this ethnographic study and you are pursuing your PhD, but then this healer looks through it in a way and says, why would you ever want to get rid of auditory hallucinations, what our Western world has called a pathology, and our tendency to pathologize everything? I like to say, if you wear an orange sweater long enough, they're going to give you orange sweater syndrome. And it's like this constant, but I really think it's almost a sleep paralysis, a level of consciousness where people have been indoctrinated so intensely about how we think about life, how we think about existence, from ontological to epistemological to phenomenological. The West has come in with psychology and basically said, we know what it is, and we know what's healthy, and we know what's not. And it's created so much sickness on so many levels. So I wanted to read one other piece from Selah, if I may, that I think kind of opens us up. You write, and this is so beautiful in kind of everything we're exploring, but you say, if you can get a handle on it, it's probably a door. I'm wary of doors and doorways. Doors are anticipated architectural technologies. They grant access, they permit exits. What's critical to note about doors is that they maintain the logic of the architectural frame. A building does not lose its integrity with the inclusion of a door. Doors are systemic agents granting mobility within familiar fields. As such, like the solutions we often offer to our most persistent civilization challenges, doors allow us to shuffle within the already known, to move the pieces around in the name of innovation while maintaining the same design. Doors behave. You know what doesn't behave? Cracks. Architects don't design cracks. They don't anticipate cracks. Cracks are not part of the furniture. They are the excessiveness of the frame, design's ecstasy. They are neither external nor internal. Cracks are not solutions, not guarantees or final answers, but something about them marks deterritorializing tensions and obliquely traces out new realities. Talk to us about cracks, brother.
Let's do it. And yes, I think a good way to think about cracks is often to think about doors. People ask me questions like, so how do we leave capitalism, or how do we leave racism behind, or how do we leave all the isms and forms of closure that within which we're subjectivized and we're subject to, right? How do we leave them behind? And there's something about leaving things behind that seems to restore them, as I see and I sit with history and fiction, right? It's that the way we respond to the crisis is often the crisis. And the very attempts to leave something behind, to exit, to annihilate, to replace something violently with another better thing, a better theory, a better form of government. It seems like the world behaves as if our bodies that appear are not the only aspects of embodiment that we should be concerned with. That cut down this body, and the body still finds a way to engulf or enfold or materialize itself. Let me stop speaking in the abstract and say a few things about the revolution, the French Revolution, right? And how they struggled to get rid of the elite class. They literally got rid of them. Speaking about getting rid of the billionaires or the trillionaire, just the one. Get rid of them, right? They beheaded all of them, right? And they won. They won. It was one of those rare occasions where a revolution actually saw through its thesis of replacement. Let's get right down to it. Cut off all their heads and start afresh. And they did. But you see, in doing so, they left the throne intact. The throne still remained. And right there on the throne, Napoleon sat his butt. And he became the very thing that he had championed lives against. And I see that occasion, throughout history, throughout fiction. It's every time we come across something, we become anti this or anti that. And then we sustain the logic of the things we're trying to get rid of just by the posture. Another way that I've put it in my writing, it might show up in Selah, I can't remember now, is lean on a wall long enough and you become the wall. You take on the shapes of the things you're against. But more critically, you kind of lose the spaces of the minor gestures where the wall is not quite complete. It might be important to put it this way, that to leave the prison is to be committed to the geometric integrity of the prison, right? Because to leave anything behind is to perform the thing, right? It's to enact the thing, right? There was this series on Netflix called OA. I don't know if you watched it. Did you?
No.
It was just, it wasn't very popular, but it had a cult following. Many people really It was well done, especially the first season. It was canceled in the second season for reasons I don't understand, because it was such a brilliant form of storytelling. I'll skip all the draws and stuff and just get right down to a group of travelers, interdimensional travelers, stuck in a prison, and they're there and they're trying to get out, right? Some person has captured them and put them on the ground in a prison, and they're really trying to get out. The leader of this ragtag group of travelers sits down and realizes something is wrong and reminds all of them, the cohort, that in trying to force our way out, we might be reinforcing the thing that is holding us. It's just like a frog in a bowl of curds, and every attempt to struggle to get out makes the yogurt even more solid. And so they decide to do a dance, and in the dance they find they come out, they escape. You see, the dance has nothing to do with trying to get out. The dance is a staying with. The crack is that dancing for me. The crack is the hidden tensions of excessiveness that is produced by systems of closure, right? It's not the way out. Again, I often tell folks that the way out is already a form of institutionalization, right? Just like doors maintain buildings, the exit signs are still anticipated. So if an institution says, this is the exit, right? This is the way out, be suspicious, because the way out is also part of the blueprint, right? So I don't look for doorways or exit signs. I'm compassionate and open in feeling to the anti-racists and the anti-capitalists, but I kind of also recognize that anti-racism does not address racism. It's too squarely focused on racism as a thing to notice that racism is beside itself. I call it paramorphology in my thinking. That to really get a glimpse of Western, if you focus on Western, you're performing the visual disciplinarity of modernity, which is to look at the thing itself, right? But the thing itself is not itself, right? The thing is beside itself. My son is autistic, and he teaches me how to look beside things, to appreciate the thing, right? It's like he's not committed to the neurotypical gaze we're used to. So I look beside the thing to appreciate the thing. Anti-capitalism is too squarely focused on capitalism to understand capitalism. You have to look to the side of things. Cracks are how objects, bodies, concepts co-create and spawn tensions that crystallize hidden troubles within systems of closure. And when they crystallize into cracks, they become monsters. I think something about sitting with the monster invites a different kind of queering and a different kind of flowering, fungal flowering, so much so that we become stuff that the system cannot metabolize. And that's what politics is for me.
And
going on all around the place, just jumping from here to here. Yes.
Bayo, it was beautiful, and it sparks many directions I could go. One, I also have a daughter who's 13. Her name is Story, and she's on the spectrum and has autism and a genetic deletion, and the gifts that she has given me to be able to see through a new lens and a way that the world in which she embodies has invited me. It's been nothing short of an invitation into breaking from my archaic natures and how I see and compartmentalize the world and have for so long. So it's been so beautiful. And then, I adore Deleuze and Guattari and their work. And as you speak, it reminded me of their concept of a false line of flight, where this idea of the line of flight is a new potentiality, an opening, a portal, an access point. But to approach the thing too closely and to try and leave or fix or solve or eradicate or get rid of becomes this false line of flight. It never gets you to what you're trying, because it is part of the institution. It is part of the Rubik's Cube that you're still messing with. And I love this one story. Well, I have so many. I want to say a couple things. One, I can't remember what this is from, but it was a fable of some sort, and it was a grandfather speaking to his grandson, and the grandson was asking his grandfather how he could get rid of sadness and get rid of suffering and get rid of anger. And the grandfather handed him a stick and said, I want you to take this stick and I want you to break off the right side of the stick. And the grandson, took the stick, broke off the right side, handed it back to the grandfather. And the grandfather said, no, it still has a right side. I want you to break off the right side. And so the grandson again breaks it, hands it back. It's getting smaller. And grandfather says, no, it still has the right side. So the kid just keeps breaking it until he hands him this small little teeny stick. And the grandfather says, it still has a right side and it will always have a right side. There's nothing that you can do that will eradicate or get rid of your anger, your sadness, your fear, the human experience, sorrow, suffering. And it's in our attempt to get rid of it that we curate more of it. Some of the wisest teachings in the Tibetan book of living and dying, the surest way to go to hell is to try and run from hell. The surest way to experience pain is the attempt to alleviate pain. And I often think of Alan Watts's work and the backwards law. And he says it's wrought with paradox. The more that you try to become happy, the more sorrowful you feel. The more, he says very poignantly, chasing a positive experience becomes a negative experience. Accepting a negative experience becomes a positive experience. And one more I'll give you that I love, because I love stories and they bring everything to life. And I can't remember the source, but it was a man sitting in a cave and he's meditating and he's trying to find peace and stillness. And these three ghosts arrive and begin haunting. And he at first asked them very politely, can you please exit my cave? I need peace and stillness. And they keep haunting, doing their thing. Then he gets super pissed, loses his cool, flips the table, starts screaming, get the hell out of here. I asked you nicely. Now I'm telling you, you gotta leave. They keep haunting. Finally, exhausted, falls to his knees, tears streaming, begging, pleading, please leave me alone. Give me some peace. They still keep haunting. Finally arrives at a place where he goes, you know what? Screw it. Come in. You want something to drink? They come in, have some tea, and then they take off. and so it is with our attempt to eradicate, get rid of, or as you so poignantly speak, mathematically solve and fix. We're asking the wrong questions. As Gregory Bateson so beautifully said, the major problems in the world lie in the difference between how nature works and how man thinks.
Yes. That is beautiful, brother. Those stories, and especially the story about breaking up the right side and immediately creating new right sides in the very efforts to break off the right side. Let's get rid of them. But the very thing about getting rid of the other is that the very act produces new others, right? Let's get rid of all the terrorists. And in doing so, you proliferate new forms of terrorism. It's profound to sit with. Yeah.
Be careful not to become a monster when fighting monsters. And so maybe, I'd love to talk to you about it's interesting because the questions that come your way are solution focused for many. Like, well,
Yeah.
Bayo, they let you, you can so beautifully articulate the ails of our times that many people just immediately go to, well, what's next? What do we do? How do we work on this? But maybe we can talk some about modernity, Western psychology, and the decolonization that has run rampant for so long. I think about Dr. Bruce Alexander's work. He wrote a book called The Globalization of Addiction, and he talks primarily about addiction being impoverishment of spiritual connection. And he has a term called psychosocial disintegration. This idea that we have with Aboriginal cultures, with African cultures, with Native American cultures, we have done nothing short of rape, pillage, murder, and rip these cultures from their lineage, from their histories, from their ties, and therefore curated the pathologies that we so claim to diagnose and treat. And so I'd love to just kind of know from you where you feel like psychology stands, and maybe a decolonizing energy that psychology could bring, because that's what I'm most fascinated with as a therapist, licensed professional counselor, my PhD in consciousness and society. I oftentimes find myself sitting with clients and helping them deconstruct the massive indoctrination that they've dealt with their whole lives that tells them about their psyche, about their humanity, and it flies in the face of everything that therapists are sometimes perpetuating and reinforcing, which is this way to, back to your Yoruba healer. Why are we trying to get rid of these things? Why are we trying to break the right side of the stick? Why are we running from ourselves? Why are we not focused on integration and immersion and a deeper understanding and slowing down
Yes.
to be with?
Well, therapy, or not to conflate therapy with psychology, but to see them in as some part of a disciplinary spectrum of interventions to mark, maintain, sustain, name, and render the body legible. That it has never been neutral. It's deeply political, right? You could read Plato and Heraclitus and Aristotle, all the way to Foucault and Jean-Henri Tosquelles. You can sweep a gaze and just go through history, and you would be baffled to see how myriad and how indeterminate our understanding of health is. For some, health might veer closer to something that we might recognize as hedonism. It's eat well and live well and experience your desires to the fullest. And there are some that are stoic and ascetic and might insist that health is denying your body those pleasures, right? And then others might insist that health has nothing to do with these material things. Health is the harmonious relationship between the material and the spiritual. And then some might think otherwise. It's that there isn't a standard definition for health, which is not the same thing as saying we are making it up, a social construction that we summarily decide what health is. I don't think so. I think certain kinds of material arrangements enlist us into understanding the world and performing it in particular ways, right? It's always a more than human, multi-species project to create what health is. And the real implications of that are devastating, right? It means that that health is not some ideal there, right? That is uh, um, distant or disconnected from what ecologies are doing, what computer systems are doing, what algorithms are doing. It's a political making of the body, that bodies are constantly produced within modernity, right? And certain production modalities create bodies and produce bodies and maintain bodies that are adjudged typical or proper, right? This is, of course, this brings us to a consideration of race. Certain kinds of bodies are not acceptable. Certain kinds of bodies will always be less than within certain kinds of arrangements, while other kinds of bodies are seen as the avatars, descriptive of what it means to be a proper body, right? The slave plantation in the United States was an attempt to render certain kinds of bodies amenable, not fully resolved, but amenable to the service of the avatars, right? And it's not so much a racial supremacy as it is a racial neutralization, right? I often think about whiteness not as identity, but whiteness as the production of discrete bodies to fit within, this dimension and regime of power, the way we speak about what it means to be in the world, right? This is what whiteness is. Whiteness is not white skin. Whiteness is how skins come to be delineated from fungi, and mountains and rivers. It's how we become still, individual, cookie cutter representations of a process that is dynamic and moving, right? Whiteness cannot stand race, actually. It's not that it's a superior form of race. It wants to get rid of race altogether, right? It cannot see race. It cannot see racialization. Their bodies are the humbled, mangled, ongoing dynamicity of unsettled forms of power, constantly moving and roving and meandering. And so this idea of the body not being predetermined allows me to notice that every attempt to name the body is dangerous. Every attempt to heal the body already conjures and tugs upon algorithmic and processual forms of power that that could very well obscure other ways of being in the world and push them out from view. So to be well is not just to arrive. To be well is to have lost other ways of being in the world. To get a doctor's clean bill of health is to have lost perhaps a connection with an ancestor, right? Health loses something, right? Because health is a forgetting of the field. Health is a discretization of the body so that it fits in. It's the violence of inclusion. Where does psychology come in? Well, psychology is the policeman of this forgetfulness. It needs to maintain this forgetfulness. It says, if you look like this, or if you think like this, or if you're experiencing this, then you're not amenable to what we're doing here. It's the Dostoevsky principle. I'm just making this up. From the Brothers Karamazov, with that famous parable, right, where the Christ returns and the church is like, you're getting in the way of what we're trying to do here. And the Christ is like, I thought I was the way. I thought I was supposed to be the shit. And I've come back now. Didn't you read the Bible? It's second coming and all that, folks. And the church is like, but we have a thing. We have stuff going on here. You're interrupting those things, right? It's almost in the same way we are. Health is not about health. It's not about, wellness. It's about maintenance. And psychology is a governing structure, is a disciplining form. It disciplines the body into morphology. It disciplines the body into legibility. It disciplines the body into neurotypicality. It says if you grieve for more than this certain period of time, then you are not being a productive citizen, right? It looks at trauma and it productivizes trauma so that it works for industry, right? The very conceptualization of trauma owes itself to the trains, the railway systems, and insurance policies, and questions about what it means to be a citizen, and who gets to be well and who doesn't get to be well, right? So to be well is not some neutral thing. It is a governing structure. It's a governing dynamic. Yeah, I'll stop there for now.
Oh,
Just super.
well, Bayo, like, yeah, profound and so deeply embedded in every thought process we have, and how it's just the conditioning baffles me. My own conditioning, constantly waking up from it and going, we have been, who decides? It's almost like people have come into the world and told us that this beautiful, kaleidoscopic, multiplistic existence of being one with the earth and nature and human in existence from an ontological standpoint has a purpose, and it should be done like this, and there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. And like you said, the psychological policing, not only of the mind and consciousness, but also of the body. And, Foucault talks about disciplinary power, biopower. Gilles Deleuze's work. Yes. And Gilles Deleuze's work on societies of control, and this idea that we become seen as
individuals.
Say it again. Yes.
Individual.
Yes.
Individual. Divided in society. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, again, I'm a storyteller, and I remember music would set me free, and still does. And it was music and art that could pierce through the confines and the overstructure of everything. And it was music and psychology, but a new vision in how to look at the mind and space and bodies and being. But there was an artist that I absolutely adore. His name was Nitin Sawhney, and he's a producer, and he made an album called Beyond Skin. And on the front was a figure, almost a clay figure, screaming. And I remember the visual art caught me so tremendously that I got the CD back when there were CDs, and you could open it up, and I read the liner notes. And if I may, I want to read them for you. They're so profound.
Please, brother.
So he says, I am Indian. To be more accurate, I was raised in England, but my parents came from India. Land, people, government, or self. Indian. What does that mean? At this time, the government of India is testing nuclear weapons. Am I less Indian if I don't defend their actions? Less Indian for being born and raised in Britain, for not speaking Hindi? Am I not English because of my cultural heritage or the color of my skin? Who decides? History tells me my heritage came from the subcontinent, a third world country, a developing nation, a colonized land. So what is history? For me, just another arrogant, Eurocentric term. I learned only about Russian, European, American history in my school's syllabus. India, Pakistan, Africa, these places were full of people whose history did not matter, the enslaved, the inferior. This is an album with a time span that runs backwards. It begins with the Indian Prime Minister, Vajpayee, proudly announcing the testing of 3 nuclear bombs on Indian soil. He is the leader of the BJP, the Hindu fundamentalist party. These tests first took place in 1998 and 1945, 2 years before the independence of India. Oppenheimer, creator of the atomic bomb, witnessed the first test of his creation. Afterwards, he quoted the Bhagavad Gita, the Hindu Bible, in condemning of his own creation. His quote ends the album. He quotes Vishnu saying, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds," as he breaks down in tears. The Western creator of the bomb condemning it in the name of Hinduism. The Hindu prime minister testing it in the name of what? Progress? Should India be thanking the West for donating weapons of mass destruction? If I ever have children, will they discover their heritage through BBC News bulletins about radiation sickness or nuclear war with Pakistan? I wonder. My mother and father are featured on this album. They speak with optimism of the future, while British Nazis like Combat 18 or the BNP rush to claim responsibility for nail bombing Asians in Brick Lane. The BJP in India, the BNP in England, the first would define me by my religious heritage, the later by my color of skin. I believe in Hindu philosophy. I am not religious. I am a pacifist. I am a British Asian. My identity and my history are defined only by myself, beyond politics, beyond nationality, beyond religion, and beyond skin.
Mm-hmm. That is
And
beautiful.
dude, I was like 21 and I'm reading that in the record store, listening to this music that is put in a section, first of all, called world music. What is world
Yeah,
music? How do we categorize? Is not all music world music? But
it's
these,
football to the American soccer.
yes. But like you said, how do we first recognize the confines of our imprisonment in
Yeah,
and that's, you know, I want to be mindful. I know we're coming up on time, but I would love for you to just maybe talk a bit about consciousness and how we
right,
continue to free our minds. Like my favorite
right.
Parliament Funkadelic, the band George Clinton, they so
Yeah.
famously said, "Free your mind and your ass will follow," meaning, you know, consciousness and everything will move from that. But please.
um, there's a Nigerian musician. Her name is Asha, which means eagle or some mighty bird of some kind. When she had a debut album many years ago, um, I can't remember when, but in the 2010s or something, or maybe 2007, 2006 or 7. She she had a track called Jailer, and if I can remember the lyrics, it was, "I'm talking to you, jailer. Um, Stop calling me a prisoner." You know, something along those lines, and it was almost like a dialogic encounter with the one who holds the keys and saying, you know, you're in prison too. You're in prison too. You put me in jail, but you're also in prison, you know. And there's something theoretically significant about that, but possibly not in the way that Asha herself may have anticipated. Um, and what's significant to me is, if you focus on the jailer, you're already too late, right? If you When you ask the question, who decides, just the enunciation of the word who skirts around and skips the heavy civilizational pre discretization dynamics which create and produce the bodies, jailers everywhere, you know, that give birth to the systems that proliferate incarceration.
Hmm.
But if we start from the identity, the enemy, if we start from the enemy, the self that incarcerates, we've lost sight of the field that produces the selves that incarcerate, right? I wonder if that makes some sense.
Yes.
That a lot of our politics, again, is about discrete entities that, if we only got rid of them, we will we'll be fine. It'll be fine. Ebony and ivory can live together in peace and harmony. But the thing is, we lose sight of the field that proliferates those subjectivities, right? We lose sight of the the ways that subjectivity experience has never been fully domiciled within the human body, right? The individual is not the field, right? And so the enemy, or and this is where conspiracy theories thrive the most, as well intentioned as they are, and as needed as forms of art as they are, right? Queering typical vision and visuality and imagination, right? Especially within oppressive systems. There's something about the how the enemy shows up that obscures the ways that that polarity maintains forms of accommodation. It's that whiteness wants nothing more than to produce anti-whiteness activist groups. It's like, yes, anti-capitalism is the greatest form of capitalism. It's like, course, of course, yeah, you should try to cut me down, slit my throat. Here's my throat, cut it off. It's that it wants you to exert energy to stick in the sword. But in doing that, like that beautiful story of the pencil that constantly produces the very thing it's asked not to produce. It's that systems proliferate paramorphologically. They create from the side, obliquely, not in the frontality of things. If we focus on the enemy, we lose sight of the real work. The Bible has a beautiful saying. It says, our fight is not against the enemy, the devil. It's against principalities and powers in high places, right? I think that's in the book of Ephesians, right? It's against principalities and powers in high places. I like to modulate things a little bit, syncopate things a little bit, and say that our fight, so-called fight, is against principalities and powers in low places. So it's not like divinities and bearded gods that we have to contend with. We're contending with fields, mycelial fields of ancestrality, sedimentation of bodies, layered upon layers upon layers upon layers of what bodies are doing, right? I think about what happens in the United States and how politics is this, focus on this tribalism, where the idea is to fact check the other out of reality. Is to say to the MAGA hat wearing person that you are wrong. And if you cannot see that, then you are wicked and you're part of the problem. It doesn't know how to think of belief and positionality as things that precede the subject, so to speak. Things that precede the citizen subject. So it thinks that it presupposes that we merely we kind of analyze the data and then make up our minds, right? We like, oh, I've surveyed the political spectrum. I've seen this guy, I've seen that woman. I'm deciding based upon the facts that I'm going for Trump. That's not how humans work. We are we are not cut off from, we are intergenerational traumatic engenderings, right? We are, it could be that the reason, and I don't want to use the word reason, see how language fails, but for conversational purposes, I'll use reason. It could be that the reason that I cast a vote for the guy in gold is that I have a pain in my neck that's my grandfather's anger crystallized as a lump in my throat, or that my body is bent in particular ways that I cannot name. You see, there was this study that came out from the pandemic where they wanted to see how bodies moved, or how people could actually perform what we did, this ritual of space 6 feet, right? We did this 6 feet thing, dance. right? So you stay over there, I stay over here. Give me distance. What did we call it? We called it something distance or something.
I can't even. Yeah.
Can't remember.
No.
We gave it a name. It was a very nice name. We called it, yeah, just it's not social distance, safe distance. I don't know what we called it. I can't remember. The pandemic seemed like so long ago. But in trying to study how that happened, the scientists noticed something really strange. That once when you tell people to move in a space, they somehow always go left.
Mm.
Like they always go left. And it was like, this is a hypothesis worth exploring. And they found out that people tend to go left. They just tend to go left. And then they noticed through history that there are actually credible explorations of this phenomenon that they didn't have a name for and they don't understand. That there was once a time when we designed this is which is counterclockwise, right? We designed stadiums or stadia, whatever. Let's go with stadiums. We designed stadiums so that the athletes ran rightward, but the athletes themselves reported something isn't right here. Our bodies want to drift leftward. That's when it became convention to design stadiums going leftward. That's why NASCAR goes leftward.
Wow.
Right? We just keep on going left and we don't know why. So we're exploring biomechanics, we're exploring brain states, we're exploring the body. And I think just in exploring the body, as if we will find an organelle saying go left, inside us, is already too late. Maybe we are leftward performing materiality. Maybe it's not that the body goes left, it's that leftward becomes embodied, right?
Mm.
It to me here, the matter is about the field, brother. It's not the discrete entities in the field. Who decides might be too tiny a frame to understand or to approximate the challenge of consciousness, right? The challenge of consciousness. Without getting into the metaphysics of what consciousness is, how I want to hold it is what fields are doing and what worlds they're conjuring and what that allows us to play with and what that prohibits us from doing as well. It's this tension with fields and their entities, right? Ethics and morality. Ethics being this Brownian field of erotic, orgasmic movement that is reduced to morality as this geoscrupulous, performance of right and wrong, right? That is still indebted to this swirling river that is still moving and doing things, right? So I guess what all of that wants to do is to ask, what is the field doing? I consider myself a poet of the fields, of fields. Is the poetics of relations with Edouard Glissant. It's mycelium. My work doesn't want to focus on people. I don't want to persuade people, because even if I can change your mind, changing your mind still limits the frame. If I could convert it to blue or convert it to red, it still limits the frame. I want to think in terms of what isn't familiar at all. What is missing beyond our sensorium? What is the world inviting us to notice, if only we stayed with it a little bit longer? And those kinds of questions are not held well within institutional politics or even counterculture, right? They're held within this artistic space that has no name yet. Meandering, fugitive assemblages that I think of as parapolitics. That's culture.
Meandering, fugitive assemblages that and the term you use, say it again.
Parapolitics.
Parapolitics, yeah. Bayo, I'm speechless. I'm not speechless, and I could say a lot, but I think what came up for me in all of that was this idea of, again, Bateson's work, how nature is, how life is, the isness of spirit and the flow of the river of spirit, and then everything that we do or bodies do interacting with those fields, and our ego and compartmentalization of particular things. I think about Nora Bateson's concept of mental monocropping, this idea that we, and that's what institutions do. That's why we have anthropology, which is separate from psychology, which is separate from business, which is separate from art, which is separate from education, which is separate from health, when in reality, the existence of those fields and how they interact with one another, the relationships, the in between, the spaces in between, is what I am fascinated by as well. And I'm just so incredibly grateful for your work, Bayo, and for anybody. I would love to have you on again at some point, because I feel like this conversation will grow and expand, and there's so much more. But both of your works, These Wilds Beyond Our Fences and Selah, your newest work, are not just books, but they are portals and openings and coalescings and a phony poesis. Nora Bateson's term.
I love Nora's term.
This is a phony poesis, and for anybody that doesn't know, it's the opposite of insidious. It is a coalescing, a growth, a movement, and it has created somathesy for me as well, like this learning and learning about myself and learning with others. And so I'm just incredibly grateful for you. I can't say it enough, brother. Thank you again for coming on Conversations with Dr. West. And any final words for anybody that wants to get a hold of you or reach out, or kind of current focus, anything that you want to say before we wrap?
Well, you can find me easily. Everyone is findable these days. Nothing to that. But I was just thinking about Scooby-Doo. For some reason, I was thinking about Scooby-Doo and the tired, exhausted demasking of every villain, and how that mimics the breaking of the right side, right? It's like, who done it? And
who's
then
behind all this? Yeah.
Yes, who's it's the constant demasking that does not know how to notice the script or the plot, the theme song, the length of the cartoon. It's how we are committed to the final act and do lose sight of the play, right? And maybe my invitation to folks is, throughout history, we've it seems, at least modern history, we will always try to get rid of the thing, but we need the thing we need the thing, because unless we have the thing, we cannot have cracks. Cracks don't emerge in space. The cracks are cracks in things, in oppression, in systems of closure. Let's focus on the crack, not the villain. The villain is just as much like Mr. Jailer in Asha's song, just as much a prisoner to this arrangement.
Bayo, thank you. Happy Thursday. And thank you again for coming on Conversations with Dr. West. Grateful for you.
Thank you, brother. It's been wonderful. Thank you.